What's up, everyone? How are we doing? As always, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys listening. If you like these videos, feel free to comment and share and subscribe and whatnot to help this page grow. Today, I'm talking about the problem with research. And now, more times than not, people who talk about the problem with research like to point out the flaws of research. Oh, it doesn't embody this. It doesn't take into account these variables. It doesn't consider this. It's too isolated. It's too integrative. It's too, and it's not always in the living, right? It might be, whether it's cellular and looking at certain pathways, or whether it's actually taking place in a human, or whether it's taking place in mice, whatever. I'm not here to argue about that. My issue with research is that there should be a disclaimer on it that it's not there to give you an answer. Research allows us, the reader, to compile evidence, interpret the research. That's the key word, by the way, interpret it, to allow for better application. For the most part, this is a very general, I don't want to call it too simple, but it's pretty simple concept, the way to look at it. Research kind of has two major ways, especially in strength conditioning, that it works. One, it's typically very mechanistic. It's typically done at a cellular level or pathway, and we're looking at how things work. An easy example is trying to understand how a hormone binds to a receptor and what processes take place. All right, so that's very much mechanistic. Or maybe it's looking at how a muscle transmits force, or what tighten a molecule in muscle does regarding force, storage, elastic energy, or whatever, okay? It's mechanistic. It's typically very micro. Then we go up, that's my up. We go up to the macro, and here we kind of compare methods and modalities. You go, you take a mechanism or belief or concept from that micro, and you say, when muscles are trained at long fiber lengths, they develop more hypertrophy, but when they're developed at shorter, whatever, you blah, blah, blah. And you say, I want to test the difference between a full depth squat versus a half squat. But then you can't just test that. You got to test it against something. So comparative relative to an outcome. That is something like, maybe do you jump higher or run faster, or do you have more muscle after doing X, Y, and Z kind of workout, right? And so kind of this comparative means of assessing what's kind of the most effective method for a specific way. And there you kind of get cohorts, so population groups, people, and you go, hey, you guys do this, and you guys do this, and we kind of try and make the things as similar as possible, and you try and see which one's more effective. The issue with research is people just read research in an attempt for it to give you answers. And that's not what works. You're actually, in my opinion, supposed to take research and look at the top, the macro, and the micro, and use them to reflect off one another, right? You see micro, this is occurring mechanisms that take place. We know that when we dissect the muscle, these structures exist, and these structures do this. And we know that mechanical tension does this and that and causes these pathways to grow. Then you say, okay, I know those processes, and now I look at the macro view, and you say, well, this exercise has this amount of mechanical tension, and these muscles are working, and so I can then reflect those comparative outcomes between, the half squat versus the full squat back on the mechanistic views that are micro, and then have a good justification for understanding what's taking place. But by no means is the research paper that's trying to identify what's more effective, a half squat versus a full squat, is not actually about a half squat or a full squat. That's actually not what the debate is about. The debate is a macro, big picture extrapolation of what happened in the micro. The debate isn't, full depth squat or whatever squat. Bear with me. It's the idea that you're looking at the process of, let's just use the example of the full squat, half squat, mechanical tension occurring in the muscle fibers in a lengthened sarcomere position, whatever, versus a shortened one and then what differences might take place, and if it's different than what we expected, are there other confounding variables like neurological processes or things like that that take place. So you're supposed to kind of take this very much lots of things going on in the macro version, but you're trying to think about it mechanistically. What is happening? It's not actually about the squat. The squat is just a medium or a means through which you're testing your hypothesis. It's really not about the exercise at all. It's about what the exercise is doing. In the same way, when you study things at the cellular level, it's not necessarily about where exactly or what number cell that is or what number muscle fiber that is, but it's the mechanism of what's taking place between them, right? It's not about, for example, would be if you put something to speed up a reaction, right? It's about the reaction that takes place, not necessarily the agent you put in to speed it up. In the same way, it's not about the squat or the back squat taking place. It's about what the back squat and the squat are actually doing to the muscles. And so this is where people make a lot of mistakes, because they take that information and they do two things. One, you can point out infinite number of flaws. Cool, congratulations. That's really easy to do. I can point out flaws about anything. If pointing out flaws meant anything, I'd be the greatest at it. Because I can complain about my grass outside and how in the winter it's not warm, and in the summer it doesn't cool my feet. What a flaw. That's a pretty crappy grass. But you can point flaws about stuff all day long. It is so easy. It's so stupid. Okay? It's not about pointing out flaws. It's about trying to come closer to the truth, right? There's, lesson theory said, there's one truth. And that truth kind of operates on a spectrum to an extent. You can have percent rightness, percent correctness. There's only 100% correctness, right? But I can find an infinite number of things that are 0% correctness, all the flaws. So it's not about the flaws. If you're sitting there pointing out flaws in research, that's too bad for you. Whatever, you're lost. That's not hard. It's not cool. It's make you special. It's just kind of stupid, to be honest with you. So we want to be able to use these, macro and micro aspects to then dive into the understanding of the theory, essentially, that we're trying to get to. We're trying to, piece together these bits of information, and then within that, you kind of have this, theory, this little ball of information you've created, and then based on the evidence you've used, you probably have a percent likelihood of correctness of that little bit of information. And as you read more, you might add a bit to it, or you might take some bits away, but you slowly develop your own theory in that processing of information. When you take new bits of information in, it gets processed through this big globular ball of information that you've created, this almost supercomputer of knowledge that you've begin to accumulate, and that's where information kind of churns through, so you can then connect dots to different areas. But point is, don't be silly. Don't complain about research. Understand what research is, right? As you can point flaws in it. That's one thing you can easily do. You can also complain how it's not integrated enough. It's too isolated. It's not applicable. That's not the point. Not the point. All right. The point of research is to help you understand essentially foundational principles that take place, and so we can build evidence to then support our theories and ideas. So I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you enjoy. As always, take care, and thank you for listening.